flashes, any annotations you want to provide activities, these structures before I do that, I'll just say when you're making those annotations about the impact flashes, any annotations you want to provide about these structures in the corona you saw during the eclipse. Can't wait to see you all back here. We would take those annotations for what you did for science. And that's it for me. It was so wonderful to talk to you over the last 2 days. Thank you again, and can't wait to see you all back here on Earth. Thanks again for what you did for science.
For preparing us. We really appreciate you. Can't wait to talk more about this. This was too short. For the sunset recording, if you're looking for that, it's you guys did an extraordinary job preparing the file. We really appreciate you. Can't wait to talk more about this. This was too short. For the sunset recording, if you're looking for that,
copy all integrity. Science is over and out.
And the file name is recording, open brackets, 13, close bracket.
Copy all integrity. Science is over and out.
Integrity Houston, we're maneuvering to the Lunar Obs attitude, and we'll be ready to dial for the PFC as soon as we see you online. Integrity Houston, we're maneuvering to the Lunar Obs attitude, and we'll be ready to dial for the PFC as soon as we see you online.
Pictures, we're a little PCD limited. We copy.
Checking.
Can you say window for science pictures? We're a little PCD
Christina,
limited.
window 2. Checking. Christina, window 2.
Copy. We see it coming into view. You guys look gorgeous.
Why, thank you.
Copy. We see it coming into view. You guys look gorgeous.
Why, thank you.
This is Artemis Mission Control. You just heard Dr. Reid speaking with the crew aboard the Integrity spacecraft Orion. This is Artemis Mission Control. You just heard Dr. Kelsey Young, Artemis Science Flight Operations Lead, speaking with the crew aboard the Integrity spacecraft Orion. Yesterday was Lunar Flyby Day for the astronauts aboard Orion. They had about 6 hours to observe the moon, and during that time, they took turns taking photos as well as making annotations. Yesterday was Lunar Flyby Day for the astronauts sent to the science team last night. 6 hours of course, to observe the moon, and during that time, they took turns down taking photos as well as making annotations and making audio recordings that were sent to the science team last night. Of course, if you got to watch the conversation, also you calling down information from Dr. Kelsey Young of what they were seeing was their post-lunar flyby conference. As you heard, she asked some specific questions about some of the targets that they saw. The conversation you just heard from Dr. Kelsey Young with the crew was their post-lunar flyby conference. As you heard, she asked some specific questions about some of the targets that they saw, as well as the configuration of the spacecraft. So even minute details about moving through the spacecraft or how vision was changed based on placement helps us very important to Artemis missions to the moon. Now this view inside the SIR, the Science Evaluation Room, you can see this team of scientists or how vision was changed based on placement are very important to us. And you can see the photos from the crew at images.nasa.gov Science Evaluation Room. You can see this team of scientists taking a look at one of the photos that the crew shared. And you can see the photos from the crew at images.nasa.gov or by visiting NASA's social media. That's at NASA. During the flyby yesterday, Artemis, the crew became some of the first humans to see portions of the moon that had never been seen before by human eyes. During the flyby yesterday, the crew became some of the first humans to see portions of the moon that had never been seen before by human eyes. Just after the conclusion of the post-Lunar Flyby conference with the science team, you heard NASA astronaut Christina Koch is moving into the next portion of her day. Just after the conclusion of the post-Lunar Flyby conference, she's going to be taking some pictures of the Earth NASA astronaut Christina Koch is moving into the next portion of her day. That would be opportunistic science imaging. She's going to be taking some pictures of the Earth from outside the windows of Orion. All of the Artemis II members will also get a chance to speak with their families today in private family conferences. Additionally, we are targeting the RTC-1 burn this evening. We're looking at Artemis II members will also get a chance to speak with their families today in private family conferences. Trajectory correction. Additionally, we are targeting the RTC-1 burn this evening. We're looking at about 7:03
Our trajectory
p.m.
was determined
Central Time.
the RTC-1
the
burn stands
translunar
for
injection
return
burn. So these
trajectory
trajectory correction burns are fine-tuned burns that allow us to just further refine
was determined
our flight path
when
on the way
we,
home. Completed the translunar injection burn. So these trajectory correction burns are fine-tuned burns that allow us to just further refine our flight path on the way home. You're looking at a live view inside the science evaluation room as the team continues to analyze some of the photos that the crew sent down. Again, this is the first crew to fly by the moon. You're looking at a live view inside the science evaluation room as the team continues to analyze some of the photos that the crew sent down. This was determined by our launch date, which was April 1st. In over 50 years. The crew additionally became the first people to see a solar that had never before been seen by human eyes. We got this was determined by our launch date, which was April 1st. It was pretty incredible to see the corona of the sun coming around the side of the moon. To see a solar eclipse from the other side of the moon. We got some live views of that. If you haven't seen some of those images yet, pretty incredible to see the corona of the sun coming around the side of the moon. We're now a mission elapsed time of 5 days, 21 hours, and 2 minutes seen some into of those images yet. The first flight of humans aboard the Orion spacecraft. Orion is now 230,896 miles away from Earth, hours and 2 minutes into the flight of Artemis II, the first flight of humans aboard the Orion spacecraft. Miles Orion is now 230,896 miles away from Earth at any time by visiting nasa.gov/track-Artemis. 44,464 miles away from the moon and continuing to grow farther. You can track these stats at any time by visiting nasa.gov/track-Artemis. Earlier today, Orion exited the sphere of influence from the moon this morning. That means the gravitational pull of the moon is now earlier today. Orion exited on the spacecraft influence and from the moon this morning, pulled by the gravitational pull of the Earth. The gravitational pull again, we're targeting splashdown is now 3 days, now no longer pulling on the spacecraft in the Pacific Ocean. They are more our coverage remains live 24/7 pull of all the way until again we're targeting splashdown in about 3 days, 4 hours, and 14 minutes in the Pacific Ocean. Our coverage remains live 24/7. All the way until...
We copy. Thanks for the report.
Wow. Moon and Earth are just about the same size. We saw the Earth for a minute. Now Christina's looking at the moon. Pretty awesome.
We copy. Thanks for the report.
As you've heard throughout the flight, the Orion capsule is often referred to as Integrity. This is a name given to the spacecraft by the Artemis II crew members and announced last year. As you've heard throughout the flight, the Orion capsule is often referred to as Integrity. Embodies this is a name given to the spacecraft by the Artemis II crew members and many engineers, technicians, scientists, planners, and dreamers required for mission success. That the name Integrity is also a nod to the extensive integrated effort from the more than 300,000 many engineers, technicians, scientists, planners, and dreamers that must come together to venture to the moon and back. And that this name is also a nod to the extensive integrated effort from the more than 300,000 spacecraft components to the thousands of people across the world that must come together to venture to the moon and back, inspire the world, and set the course for a long-term presence at the moon. You're now looking at a live view outside the Orion spacecraft, solar array wing positioned to look at the spacecraft itself. You're now looking at a live view outside the Orion spacecraft, solar array wing positioned to look at the spacecraft module itself. Of Orion, that shiny part, is approximately 330 cubic feet habitable volume. So the interior living space for the command module is about the size of two minivans. Shiny part about 60% more cubic volume than the crew members had during the Apollo missions. Cubic feet habitable volume. So the interior living space for the crew is about the size of two minivans. And that spacecraft is made more cubic volume than the crew members had during the Apollo missions. To be specific, 355,056 as previously mentioned compose this spacecraft vehicle. Is made from more than 300,000 components, and to be specific, 355,056 individual parts compose this vehicle. This a live view inside the Artemis mission control room, where the team continues monitoring all systems aboard the spacecraft, making sure we are set for mission success. This a live view inside the Artemis mission control room. This room is also staffed. The team continues monitoring all systems aboard the spacecraft. This helps us making sure we are set for mission success, as well as our astronauts. And just down the hall, we have the International Space Station. This room is also staffed. Another flight control room staffed 24/7 to maintain all systems and safety for the crew living and working aboard our orbiting laboratory. And just down the hall, we have the International Space Station flight control room. Another flight control room staffed 24/7 to maintain all systems and safety for the crew living and working aboard our orbiting laboratory. Because the crew did have such a busy day yesterday for flyby, we anticipate hearing from them a little less today as they have some downtime. Because the crew did have such a busy day yesterday for flyby, we anticipate hearing from them a little less today as they have some downtime. Even though they are potentially in an off day, each astronaut dedicates 30 minutes every day to exercise. When in a microgravity environment, the astronauts could experience bone and muscle loss if not continuously exercising. Each astronaut dedicates 30 minutes every day to exercise. A small device when in a microgravity environment, the astronauts could experience bone and muscle loss if not continuously exercising. It can be used for both aerobic and resistance workouts, and we've seen some of those been installed inside the spacecraft. We've also been able to see some of the movement that happens outside the spacecraft when the crew is working for both aerobic so during exercise, the crew or the ground team can inside the spacecraft and prevent any loads being imparted on them that happens outside the spacecraft when the crew is working out. So during exercise, the crew or the ground team can park the solar arrays and prevent any loads being imparted on them that might damage them. Again, we're live here in the Artemis Flight Control Room. 5 days, 21 hours, and 15 minutes into the Artemis II mission. This is the flight day 7. Again, we're live here in the Artemis Flight Control Room. 5 days, 21 hours, and 15 minutes into the Artemis II mission. This is the flight day 7. And again, this is a little bit of a quieter day now that we have had the ship-to-ship call with the International Space Station and the post-lunar flyby conference with the science team. And again, this is a little bit of a quieter day now that we have had the ship-to-ship call with the International Space Station and the post-lunar flyby conference with the science team.
Integrity Houston, we're maneuvering back to bias tail to sun. Also, we're preparing to clean up your onboard burn plans, and at DPC we forgot to ask you for AGA numbers. Integrity Houston, we're maneuvering back to bias tail to sun. Also, we're preparing to clean up your onboard burn plans, and at DPC we forgot to ask you for AGA numbers. Could you please give us those?
As you heard, give us 5 minutes. We'll give you a reading, and we copy the other remarks. All good?
Roger.
Okay, Stan. AJ just came on, as you heard. Give us 5 minutes. We'll give you a reading, and we copy the other remarks. All good?
Roger.
The voice you hear communicating with the astronauts today from Artemis Mission Control is NASA astronaut Stan Love. He's the Capcom for today. The Capcom stands for Capsule Communicator, and that's the single person in the room that communicates from the Artemis Mission Control is NASA astronaut Stan Love. He's from the Capcom for today. The Capcom stands for Capsule Communicator, and that's the single person in the room that communicates with the crew. This keeps their communications streamlined, both from all the ground teams to and from the astronauts.
And Houston, integrity for opportunistic science imaging note.
We're listening.
And Houston, integrity for opportunistic science imaging. Yeah, just wanted to mention that towards the end of that opportunity, I'm not sure if it was after the
We will do that. Thanks for that information. On another topic, your new state vector is on board.
Give us a heads up.
We will do that. Thanks for that information. On another topic, your new state vector is on board.
Do I need to tell you all which PCV I'll be on? Awesome, thanks, and I'll be ready for my PFC in a couple minutes. Do I need to tell you all
Christina,
which
no, we don't
PCV
need to
I'll
know
be
which
on?
PCD you're on. We'll just dial your account.
Copy, I'll be signing it shortly. Appreciate
Christina, no, we don't need to know which PCD you're on.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
We'll just dial your account.
Copy, I'll be signing it shortly. Appreciate it. Okay, got it. Thank you.
As you heard, that communication's coming from Orion and NASA astronaut Christina Koch, mission specialist. She had an opportunity to do some opportunistic
As you heard,
science
that communications coming from Orion
was
and NASA
pointed to
astronaut
allow her to
Christina
see
Koch,
Earth
mission
and the moon at
specialist.
separate times. She had an opportunity to do some opportunistic science when the spacecraft's attitude was pointed to allow her to see Earth and the moon at separate times. You also heard Christina calling about her PFC, that stands for Private Family Conference. All of the crew members are getting some time to talk with their families today. You also heard Christina calling about her PFC, that stands for Private Family Conference. All of the crew members are getting some
Meanwhile,
time to
NASA astronaut Victor
talk
Glover
with
is
their
scheduled
families
to
today.
conduct
Some aerobic exercise on the flywheel. Teams here are sending commands to park the solar arrays in safe harbor. That prevents any loads
Meanwhile,
being
NASA
imparted
astronaut
on
Victor
them
Glover
while
is
the crew
scheduled to
is
conduct some
exercising. Aerobic exercise on the flywheel. Teams here are sending commands to park the solar arrays in safe harbor. That prevents any loads being imparted on them while the crew is exercising. Coming up in about 30 minutes, we will have our daily news conference for Artemis II, where leadership here for the mission are at Johnson Space Center, and we'll be able to discuss the latest status
Coming up in
on
about
Artemis
30
II. minutes, we will have our daily news conference for Artemis II,
Again, that's
where
coming up at
leadership
4:30
here
p.m.
for
Eastern,
the mission
3:30 Central.
are at Johnson
That'll
Space
be
Center,
broadcast
and
on
we'll be
this
able to
stream on
discuss
NASA's
the
YouTube,
latest
but we will
status
still
on
have
Artemis
our
II. Clean feed on the separate YouTube stream.
Again, that's coming up at
Once
4:30
that status
p.m.
briefing
Eastern,
is
3:30
over, you can
Central.
come right back
That'll
to
be
this feed,
broadcast on
or just
this
stay right
stream
here
on
and
NASA's
we will
YouTube,
continue
but we will
coverage
still
from
have our
inside
clean
Mission
feed
Control
on
Houston,
the
the separate YouTube stream. Once that status briefing is over, you can come right back to this feed, or just stay right here and we will continue coverage from inside Mission Control Houston.
go for secondary purge line dumps?
We are go for those dumps.
Houston Integrity, confirm we are go for secondary purge line dumps. Can you remind me again, Stan, when we have to stand down from
We
them?
are go for those dumps. Checking.
Can you remind me again, Stan, when we have to stand down from them today?
Checking. And Reid, we'd like you to stand down from CCU dumps between MET 3 hours and MET 5 hours 30 minutes, except for the scheduled dump on Victor's timeline. And Reid, we'd like you to stand down from CCU dumps between MET 3 hours and MET 5 hours 30 minutes, except for the scheduled dump on Victor's timeline at 3:10.
Okay, we copy, Stan. I'm in the process of setting up the recorded exercise. I would appreciate a call up with a 2-minute warning to stand down from exercise.
It's on our to-do list,
Okay,
Victor, don't worry.
copy, Stan. I'm in the process of setting up the recorded exercise. I would appreciate a call up with a 2-minute warning to stand down from exercise.
It's on our to-do list, Victor, don't worry.
Live here in Artemis Mission Control at Johnson Space Center in Houston, Texas. This is a visualization on your screen, and you can access this anytime on your own device by visiting nasa.gov/track-Artemis. Mission Control at Johnson Space Center in Houston, Texas. Real-time orbit this is a visualization on your screen, and you can access this anytime on your own device by visiting nasa.gov/track-Artemis. This is called ARROW, the Artemis Real-Time Orbit website. We're about 40,000 miles farther away from the moon than we were this time yesterday during our lunar flyby. And if you have not seen some of the pictures coming down, please do check out NASA's social media. We're about 40,000 miles farther away from the moon than we were this time yesterday during our lunar flyby. And if you have not seen some of the pictures coming down, please do check out NASA's social media. They are absolutely phenomenal.
Integrity Houston, Orbit 1 team is stepping off headset for a few minutes to take our team photo. We'll be back with you shortly. Sure. Integrity Houston, Orbit 1 team is stepping off headset for a few minutes to take our team photo. We'll be back with you shortly.
Sounds great, Stan. Enjoy that. And savor that moment. Please savor that moment. What an exceptional time.
Will do, sir.
Those communications coming from Capcom and NASA astronaut Stan Love to the crew aboard Orion. The Orbit 1 team is monitoring the consoles here at Mission Control Houston.
Will do, sir.
Led currently by NASA flight director coming Jeff from Capcom and NASA astronaut Stan Love to the crew aboard the team's going to take a brief the Orbit 1 team is monitoring the consoles here at Mission Control Houston for the entire mission and has been training together by NASA flight director for a significant amount of time now. All of these flight controllers are the ones to take a brief keeping the systems and the crew safe aboard the Orion spacecraft for the Artemis II mission and has been training together. Additionally, we have the Orbit 2 and 3 team with the same tasks, all of these and they'll be taking controllers are the ones keeping the systems and the crew safe aboard the Orion spacecraft for the Artemis II mission. Additionally, we have the Orbit 2 and 3 team with the same tasks, and they'll be taking their own photos. This is Artemis Mission Control continuing to monitor the flight of Orion. This is Artemis Mission Control continuing to monitor the flight of Orion. We are now 5 days, 21 hours, and 36 minutes into the Artemis II mission, the first flight of humans aboard Orion. We are now 5 days, 21 hours, and 36 minutes into the Artemis II mission, the first flight of humans aboard Orion. The Orbit 1 team is currently on console here in Artemis Mission Control and just took a group photo. We are on flight day 7 of this 10-day mission, with Orion targeted to splash down. The Orbit 1 team is currently on console here in Artemis Mission Control and just took a group photo. We are on flight day 7 of this 10-day mission, full of team members Orion who make this mission possible. About 3 days, 3 hours, that and 40 minutes from propulsion officer, CDH, command and data handling, INCO, our integrated communications officer. This room MPO, is full the mechanical team members power who make this mission so many possible. That includes Prop, the propulsion officer, CDH, command and data handling, INCO, our integrated communications officer, MPO, the mechanical and power officer, and so many more.
Hansen, there's no rush if you're still taking the photo. Are you ready for EJ readings? Whatever you want.
Yes, Jeremy, we're ready to take those AGA readings.
And
Jeremy, go ahead with those AGA readings.
Taking the photo, just going to give you EJ readings, whatever you want.
Jeremy, go ahead with those AGA readings.
27.8 for O2, and CO2 is 1.5.
Copy numbers. Do you have temperature and pressure?
27.8 for O2, and CO2 is 1.5.
Copy numbers. Do you have temperature and pressure?
10.4 for pressure and 77.3 for temperature.
Copy all. Thank you, sir.
10.4 for pressure and 77.3 for temperature.
Copy all. Thank you, sir.
And you just heard Canadian Space Agency astronaut Jeremy Hansen calling down some AGA readings. The AGA is the Anomaly Gas Analyzer, and this is powered on before exercise. It takes about 5 minutes before they can give Canadian Space Agency astronaut Jeremy Hansen calling down some AGA readings. This is the first flight of humans aboard the spacecraft, and therefore this is powered on of our ECLIS exercise. It takes about 5 minutes and life support system. They can give readings. So these readings help the team on the ground once they start exercise and in the cabin, as well as temperature. This is the first flight of humans aboard the spacecraft, and therefore the first flight of our ECLIS system, the environmental control and life support system. So these readings help the team on the ground understand what gases are in the cabin, as well as temperature. You just heard it's about 77 degrees Fahrenheit aboard Orion.
Integrity Houston for burn conference and targeting. Integrity Houston for burn conference and targeting.
Go ahead, Stan.
Hey, Jeremy, our GNC maneuvers are conflicting with our preliminary targeting activity, so we may have to do prelim a little later, or we may skip it entirely and pick up at intermediate. We'll keep you posted on how it's going. Our GNC maneuvers are conflicting with our preliminary targeting activity, so we may have to do prelim a little later, or we may skip it entirely and pick up at intermediate. We'll keep you posted on how it's going.
Trajectory information is on board for targeting. Do we have the latest burn plan on board? Okay, copy that.
Jeremy, we do not have the latest on board yet. That's one of the things that we're trying to catch up with. So the burn conference scheduled before preliminary targeting is definitely canceled. Again, we'll call you when we have updates. Jeremy, we do not have the latest on board yet. That's one of the things that we're trying to catch up with. So the burn conference scheduled before preliminary targeting is definitely canceled. Again, we'll call you when we have Jeremy, updates. We're expecting approximately 30 minutes to get the new burn plan on board.
Okay, understood, Sam. No problem. We're pretty flexible.
And Jeremy, we're expecting approximately 30 minutes to get the new burn plan on board.
Sam.
This is Artemis Mission Control at Johnson Space Center in Houston, Texas. The voice you hear on the ground is Capcom and NASA astronaut Stan Love speaking with the crew aboard Orion, specifically Canadian Space Agency astronaut Jeremy Hansen. This is Artemis Mission Control at Johnson Space Center in Houston, Texas. Return trajectory correction. The voice you hear on the ground is Capcom and NASA astronaut Stan Love speaking with the crew aboard Orion, specifically Canadian Space Agency astronaut Jeremy Hansen. Service module targeting the RTC-1 burn today. That's return trajectory correction back home. That is targeted for about 7:03 p.m. Central Time. This is a small burn using the reaction control system thrusters on their first preliminary module of targeting Orion spacecraft. They have another one of these in a couple of hours when they will have the final burn plans uplinked and the final targeting complete. Stan Love was letting the crew know that we are canceling their first preliminary burn targeting conference. They have another one of these in a couple of hours when they will have the final burn plans uplinked and the final targeting complete. It's now been 5 days, 21 hours, and 51 minutes since Orion launched atop the Space Launch System in Kennedy Space Center in Florida. The crew aboard Orion is getting into the first few hours of their day. 21 hours and 51 minutes since Orion launched atop the Space Launch System in Kennedy Space Center in Florida. By Glass Animals and Denzel Curry. Orion is getting into the first few hours of their day. They woke up approximately 10:35 a.m. Central Time today blocks of time to the song scheduled today by Glass Animals and Denzel Curry. Busy day yesterday with Lunar Flyby. Right now, pilot Victor Glover is exercising And Christina Koch is enjoying her blocks of time on the crew schedule. You heard her call down as they had an extremely busy day yesterday with Lunar Flyby. Right now, all of the crew members are getting a chance to talk to their families today. And Christina Koch is enjoying her private family conference. You heard her call down just prior to that she was ready for her PFC, and that's what that stands for. All of the crew members are getting a chance to talk to their families today. Thanks for joining us for our live coverage of the Artemis II mission. We are expecting to have a news conference today with mission leadership here at Johnson Space Center in Houston, Texas. We are expecting that news conference to start around 3:45. Thanks for joining us for our live coverage of the Artemis II mission. We are expecting to have a news conference today watching the press mission leadership here at Johnson Space Center in Houston, Texas. Change your stream. We will be airing that news conference to start around 3:45, and we also have a secondary YouTube stream and raw audio. If you're interested in watching the press conference, you can find that to also change the channel or change your stream. We will be airing that right here. We also have a secondary stream with here's a video from the outside of Orion, and as we mentioned, you can find that Victor also on NASA's YouTube. We do see the spacecraft move a little bit when the crew is exercising, and so the teams here park the solar arrays into a safe harbor position. Of Orion, and as we mentioned, any motion that they experience due to the exercising doesn't we do see the spacecraft move a little bit when the crew is exercising, and so the teams here park the solar arrays into a safe harbor position. That means any motion that they experience due to the exercise doesn't damage the solar arrays. If you're just tuning in and you are looking for the news conference that was originally slated for 3:30 p.m. Central Time, we are now expecting that to begin 3:45 p.m. Central Time. That will be live here on this YouTube stream. If you're just tuning in and you are looking for the news conference that was originally slated for 3:30 p.m. Central Time, we are now expecting that to begin 3:45 p.m. Central Time. That will be live here on this YouTube stream. This is Mission Control Houston, specifically the Artemis Flight Control Room here at Johnson Space Center in Houston, Texas. This is a live view from a camera mounted on one of Orion's solar array wings. This is Mission Control Houston, specifically the Artemis Flight Control Room here at Johnson Space Center in Houston, Texas. Interestingly enough, each of these solar arrays
This is a live view from a camera mounted on one of Orion's solar array wings.
3-bedroom homes. This camera looking back on the European service module as each of these solar arrays provides the Artemis II mission conducts this exercise for today. That's why you are seeing some movement on your screen. We are mission elapsed time. This camera looking back on the European service module as Victor into the flight of Artemis II, the first flight of humans aboard the Orion spacecraft for today. That's why you are looking for the press conference that was slated to start at 3:30 p.m. Central. Mission elapsed time. We are now expecting that to start closer to 3:45. You're in the right place. Into the flight of Artemis II, the first flight of humans aboard the Orion spacecraft. And if you are looking for the press conference that was slated to start at 3:30 p.m. Central, we are now expecting that to start closer to 3:45. You're in the right place. You're watching live coverage of the Artemis II mission, the first flight of humans aboard Orion. This is a view coming from outside the Orion spacecraft on one of the solar array wings, pointed back at the spacecraft. And as we mentioned, you see some movement because NASA astronaut Victor Glover is in his Artemis II mission, the first flight of humans aboard Orion. The crew is having a little bit of a quieter day from outside the Orion spacecraft on one of the solar array wings yesterday, pointed back photographing and recording observations about the lunar surface because NASA astronaut Victor Glover is in his exercise spacecraft approached just about 4,067 miles away after a very busy schedule yesterday. Continues to shrink now as we are preparing about the lunar surface on April 10th. The lunar surface as the spacecraft approached just about 4,067 miles away. By for the start of our daily press conference. Our distance Johnson to Space Center continues to shrink now as we are preparing for splashdown on April 10th. If you are watching this channel and looking for more spacecraft views, you can switch to our other live stream. Otherwise, standing by for the start of our daily press conference here at Johnson Space Center in Houston, Texas, and expect that to begin momentarily. So if you are watching this channel and looking for more spacecraft views, you can switch to our other live stream. Otherwise, you can stay.
The Artemis II mission is a test mission of the Orion space capsule.
Artemis II will be the first time we put humans on this rocket.
We're going back to the moon because it's the next step in our journey to Mars.
The Artemis II mission is a test mission of the Orion space capsule. We were always
Artemis
going to the moon.
will be the first time we put humans on this rocket.
Just core to who we are. It's a part of being. We're going back to the moon because it's the next step in our journey to Mars.
Continuing to test out every bit of Orion.
Pushing ourselves to explore is just core to who we are. It's a part of
sets big goals. We can bring together genius from around the world.
You have the best people on planet Earth putting this vehicle together.
Continuing to test out every bit of Orion.
To innovate for the benefit of humanity and to inspire the world through discovery.
Humanity sets big goals. We can bring together genius from around the world.
You have the best people on planet Earth putting this vehicle together.
To innovate for the benefit of humanity and to inspire the world through discovery.
Good afternoon and welcome to NASA's Johnson Space Center in Houston, Texas. I'm Bethany Stevens and we are here today to provide a status update on the historic first crewed test flight of the Orion spacecraft post-Lunar Flyby. Good afternoon and welcome to NASA's Johnson Space Center in Houston, Texas. I'm Bethany Stevens, and we are here today to provide a status update on the Artemis II First Crew Flight Director, test flight Kelsey Young, of the Orion spacecraft, Artemis II Lunar Flyby. We'll start with on our panel today. We have each of the briefers before opening it for questions in the room. Dr. Lori Glaze on the phone bridge. If you're on the phone, press star 1 to submit your question. Director. Kelsey Young, called upon, please state your name, affiliation, and start with opening remarks from each of the briefers. With that, I will hand the floor to Administrator Wiseman for his and on the phone bridge.
Thanks, Bethany.
If you're on the phone, press star 1 to submit your question.
So far, and a
when
very
called upon, please state your name, affiliation, and to whom you'd like to direct your question. With that, I will hand the floor to Administrator Wiseman for his remarks.
Miles. Thanks, Bethany. They relayed observations from the lunar surface. They've captured some very incredible imagery they performed a ship-to-ship call with their colleagues on the International Space Station. They performed additional manual piloting the Orion spacecraft from Earth. They've been working at a reduced cabin observations from the lunar surface. They've captured future integrated lander operations. They performed a ship-to-ship call with their colleagues on the International Space Station. We had millions of viewers on that that tuned in for that historic broadcast, and it concluded working at a reduced cabin pressure of 10.5 inviting astronauts to future integrated lander operations. Now, Integrity left the lunar sphere of influence earlier this morning, so there are now approximately 200 viewers on 9,000 miles tuned in for that historic broadcast on Friday evening, with the president promptly inviting astronauts to visit the recovery weather is so far looking favorable. Now, Integrity left the lunar sphere of influence. You can see some of the spectacular images. Now, approximately 209,000 miles from Earth. They will splash down Friday evening. This is the first time humans have documented some parts of the far side looking favorable. Now, these images will be publicly available on NASA's website, our digital platforms, and the White House actually released the now iconic EarthSat photo from earlier today. This is the first time humans have documented many incredible images of the moon, and will continue to release images will be publicly available on NASA's website, our digital platforms, and the White House actually over 175 gigabytes EarthSat of imagery from earlier today from the lunar pass alone. These are the first of many incredible images of the moon that you are seeing right now have released as they become available predominantly through optical communication. Just a few minutes ago is that they captured over 175 gigabytes. Now, before I turn the call over to Dr. Lori Glaze, I wanted to share some of the other things yesterday doing at NASA, and the images that you are seeing right now have been transmitted back to Earth. So the crew on the International Space Station are hard at work. They're undertaking the science and tech demos. Now, before I turn the call over to Dr. Lori Glaze, I wanted to share some of the other things that we are doing at NASA. The Exploration Ground System personnel from the Kennedy Space Center update here. So the crew on the International Space Station are hard at work. They're undertaking the science and tech demos, many of which have directly supported the Artemis program missions, and will continue to do so. ML1 to be back Exploration Ground System personnel within approximately Space Center update here. Now, this would cut down the launch pad, the turnaround time. The crawler, my understanding, is approaching measured in months right now, several months. And on the science front, my understanding is Blue Origin Mark 1 lunar landers wrapping up here at the Johnson Space Center in Chamber A. Now, this would cut down on Space Telescope time. Testing is progressing so much so that we feel reasonably confident we're going to announce a target launch. On the science front, my understanding is Blue Origin Mark 1 lunar landers wrapping up here at the Johnson Space Center in Chamber A. Almost daily while the Artemis II mission Space Telescope has been underway. Testing is progressing so much so that we feel reasonably confident we're going to announce a target launch 3 mission design discussion the next 2 weeks. Teams are working with vendors on Moonbase RFIs almost daily. We are advancing. The Skyfall has been scientific payload for the first interplanetary X-plane nuclear-powered spacecraft SR-1 Freedom. The first senior-level Artemis II mission design here is we can launch history-making missions like Artemis II with vendors on Moonbase RFIs and RFPs, and we are advancing the Skyfall scientific payload for the first interplanetary nuclear-powered spacecraft SR-1 Freedom. I think the most important point we're trying to make here is we can launch history-making missions like Artemis II, start making meaningful progress towards Artemis III, and do all the other important programs the world's been waiting for from NASA. And with that, I'll turn it over to Dr. Glaze.
Thank you, Jared. You know, they're just absolutely stunning. And we really hope when I look at all of those images that we're scrolling by. I hope all of you as the crew surpassed the record for the farthest distance, as Jared just mentioned, when they traveled on the far side of the moon. You know, they're just absolutely stunning, and we really hope that they are inspiring. They said they challenged this generation and the next as the crew to make sure that this record is for the farthest distance, as Jared just mentioned, when they traveled on the far side of the moon. not just back to the moon on a regular basis, but beyond. They said, and then of course, while this generation and the next, to make sure that this record is not as we've been watching all of the activity in Orion, we still have to ensure that Reid, Victor, Christina, and Jeremy return on a regular basis on Friday evening. So we're pretty focused on that now, making sure that they get home safely. It's been really exciting here the last couple of days. I will just say a couple of things about yesterday's operation in Orion. We still have to ensure that Reid, Victor, Christina, and Jeremy return home safely on Friday evening. So we're science teams are working together in real time with the crews at the moon. And in fact, from my perspective, one of my favorite things about watching all of the amazing data that was flowing down yesterday to test is thinking about how so much of NASA is working together in order to science teams are working together in real time with the crews at the moon. And in fact, from my perspective, one of my favorite things about watching all of the amazing data that was flowing down yesterday is thinking about how so much of NASA is working together in order to enable. It's really great to see everybody working together. So I think about our exploration programs that are supporting our transportation systems like Orion, working with our flight operations and our flight directors, all of the ground teams that are supporting. It's really great to see everybody working together. So I think about our exploration programs that are supporting, thinking about our transportation systems like Orion, and then the payloads that have been provided that they're using. So everything that you're looking at, all of the ground teams that are supporting, including the science teams supported by the Science Mission Directorate. Thinking about this information that we're actually performing the work and then the payloads that how we plan our future missions. So everything that you're looking at, I'll just say that our flight operations team continues to fly Orion and put of NASA working together to enable spacecraft make their way home. All of this information that we're gathering, we do continue to help refine how we plan our future missions spacecraft and our crew are operating together in space. I'll just say that our flight operations team continues to fly Orion and put of the science activities that are focused on the crew health and life in space. And the mission isn't over yet. Still a lot of things going on. And with that, I'm going to pass it how our spacecraft and our crew are operating together in space.
Thank you, Lori.
We continue
the administrator touched on a few of the operations that the crew's been up to recently, but I'll fill in a few of the other details of interest.
So still a lot of things
since
going
we last
on.
met
And
Sunday
with that, I'm going
evening,
to pass it over to Rick so he can share some of the operational details.
Trajectory correction maneuver, outbound trajectory. The administrator touched on a few of the operations that the crew's been up to recently, but I'll fill in a few of the other details 19 seconds, and we used our auxiliary thrusters on the service Sunday evening. Obviously, yesterday performed the first big day with flyby trajectory correction details for Kelsey. Outbound trajectory correction. We had some really poignant remarks from the crew. Feet per second. I can assure you there wasn't a dry eye, and we used our auxiliary thrusters on the service module. The two craters. Obviously, yesterday was the big day with flyby, and I'll save all those details for Kelsey. As part of the Lunar Flyby, the crew we had some really poignant remarks from the crew. Closest to the moon, and I can assure you there wasn't a dry eye in mission miles per hour relative to the surface of the moon. Of the two craters. And now they're on their way making their march back home to Earth. As part of the Lunar Flyby, the crew we bid a temporary goodbye closest to the moon earlier today at 3,138 miles per hour relative to the surface of the moon. We exited the lunar sphere of influence. Now they're on their way making their march back home to Earth's gravity. As for today's temporary goodbye, we had a couple of public affairs events. The crew is going to have each of them will have a conference with their family members. We'll have some routine medical checks, and then in the evening we're going to perform the first return trajectory correction. As for today's operations, we had a couple of public affairs events. The crew is going to have each of them will have a conference with their family members. We'll have some routine medical checks, and then in the evening we're going to perform the first return trajectory correction about 9 p.m. Eastern correction maneuver. It will finally, I'll conclude my remarks with acknowledging that the USS John P. Murtha has the service module and has started steaming out to the midway point. We expect that the recovery of Integrity and her crew later on Friday. Finally, that's all for today's operations updates. Acknowledging that the USS John P. Murtha has left port and has started steaming out to the midway point.
We did what we set out to do. The lunar science team and the crew prepared extensively, as we talked about a couple days ago, for flyby, and I hope you all saw that yesterday during execution. We confirmed, as Lori mentioned, that we can achieve science through orbital observations and through integrating science into flight operations extensively, as we talked about a couple days ago for flyby, and I hope you all saw that yesterday during execution. Future missions. We confirmed, as Lori mentioned, that we can achieve science through orbital observations and through integrating science into flight operations. Impact flashes, and as Rick just said, we left over a 30-minute observation period, and this was largely during that time of the eclipse. I can't crew observed several impact flashes. Detail. So forgive me, just we did have citizen scientists here on Earth also looking for flashes, and I know that the Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter team is hard at work trying to identify evidence of those impact flashes that the crew observed. I did have a chance to have the post-flyby crew conference. We did have citizen scientists here on Earth, and we asked also looking for flashes, and I know that the Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter team is hard at work trying to identify evidence of those impact flashes that the crew and they really helped tell us about. I did have a chance to have the post-flyby crew conference with the crew this morning, and we asked a lot of follow-ups on those impact flashes. I expected to have the impact flashes on this mission, so your impacts hitting the moon, on my face. Really helped tell us about the dynamic lunar environment. And though I was not in the science evaluation room, I heard that there were audible screams of delight. Very excited science community. You've heard me talk a lot about the importance that human explorers bring to scientific exploration, and though I was not in the science evaluation room, I heard that there were audible screams of delight. And so I'm sure all of you, like I was very excited science community. Saw any other colors other than black, white, and shades of gray. You've heard me talk a lot about the importance that human explorers bring to scientific exploration, especially around observations of color. And so I'm sure all of you, like I was these colors really help tell us nuances about the chemistry of lunar material. Especially the greens around Aristarchus. Right away they started describing the green around Aristarchus Plateau, and different browns. You all to go out and look at the moon and these colors really help tell us nuances about the chemistry of lunar material. You heard a lot of discussion, especially from our pilot Victor Glover, about the Terminator here on Earth, which really, encouraged you all to go out and highlighted the benefits and also the challenges for future surface operations. The lighting conditions along the Terminator that the crew experienced yesterday do mimic in many ways the lighting conditions of the South Polar region, which really, the low sun angles, to our mind, highlighted the benefits and also the challenges extreme shadowing surface operations. Also the lighting conditions along the Terminator that the crew experienced yesterday do mimic in many ways the lighting conditions of the South Polar region can contribute the low sun angles, the dramatic lighting causing and finally extreme shadowing and illumination also accentuating topography. This is really important for two our aimed craters in the plans and understanding how crew member observations can crater integrity for their vehicle and crater carol for Commander Wiseman's finally, the Artemis II crew in a very poignant moment upon return, the crew does plan to submit these to the International Craters in Union as consideration for official names. Crater integrity for their vehicle and crater carol for Commander Wiseman's late wife that we were really glad to thank you. Upon return, the crew does plan to submit these to the International Astronomical Union as consideration for official names.
We will open the floor and take questions, and my colleague Will over here will pass along the mic. We can start with you, Jackie.
Poignant moment, and that we were really glad to
Thanks so much. Jackie Waddles with CNN. I don't think there was a dry eye on Earth when Carol Crater was named. I was just curious, was Reid aware that that was going to be something that the crew was going to do? I was just curious if there was any Jackie Waddles with CNN. And they were just kind of looking for the crater, was a dry eye on how that came about. Carol Crater and then really quickly, I also wanted to just check on a toilet status update. That was going to be we heard this morning that I thought I heard some chatter around discussions, and they were just kind of looking for the crater or a reentry issue now. Like, is the toilet really quickly? I also wanted to just check on a toilet status update. We heard this morning that I thought I heard some chatter
yes,
around
I know the crew put
it being considered
a lot of
obviously a
thought and pre-planning into what you heard yesterday. It is my understanding that he was aware prior to yesterday.
I'll take the second part. And the toilet remains operational.
Yes, I know
the challenge
the crew
that we're working through is evacuating the wastewater
tank. Into what you heard yesterday. It is my understanding that he was aware prior to yesterday.
And so we're having to fall back to some other alternate means. The toilet remains operational. The challenge that we're working through, what you overheard on the spacecraft on the Orion wastewater tank this morning, was us deferring some maintenance on the toilet. Typically, when you have 4 crew members using it throughout the day, nominally you have to do it in the toilet, but activity what you overheard on the spacecraft or on the Orion Earth channel this morning was us deferring some maintenance on the toilet. Typically, when you have 4 crew members using it throughout the day, Nominally, you have to do a maintenance activity once a day, and with a lower use rate,
Jared, that's
since we're not able to
impressive
vent
and full
the
portfolio
wastewater
of
products,
missions you
we don't need to
outlined
do the
that
maintenance
NASA's
as
involved
often,
in
and so
now.
that's what that exchange
And
was about.
without getting you in trouble with your boss, are you going to be able to defend an $18.8 billion budget? Jared, that's a pretty impressive and full portfolio of missions you outlined that NASA's involved in now.
Kind of work with
without
Congress
getting you in trouble with your boss, are you going to be able to defend an $18.8 billion budget?
I will say we'd like to keep the focus on what we were speaking about today, and then move on to other questions like that at a later date and keep the focus on the mission.
See if the administration will support more. Thank you.
I will say we'd like to keep the focus on what we were speaking about today, and then move on to other questions like that at a later date and keep the focus on the mission.
And so
Thank you.
They asked me, so I'm going to ask you.
Have you seen anything in those images that surprised you?
And
what about those
talked about 10
images
people off campus today, and they all wanted to ask me about those remarkable images. And so
Kelsey? Sure.
they asked me, so I'm going to ask you.
Oh my gosh.
Have you seen anything in those images
when I woke up
that
this morning,
you?
I've spent most of my morning just flipping through, the thousands of images that have started to come down. And there is something in every image that surprises me, right? When I woke up this morning, after looking at hundreds of images, taken up I've the spent lunar most of my surface, I would morning get sick of it. flipping through, I have not, nor do I anticipate thousands of images that have started to come down. I mean, it's just, and there is something in every image that surprises me, the amount of time and the rate at which they were moving. After looking at hundreds of images taken up the lunar surface, I would get sick of it. Describe yesterday. I have not, nor do I looking at the same feature as I was 10 minutes ago, and it looks different. It's just right, and the images reflect their that experience. And the amount of time and the rate at which they were moving, I connect to each one in a different way, especially in light of what we described yesterday. Wow, I'm looking at the same feature as I was 10 minutes ago as a geologist by training. And the images reflect pictures of the lunar surface. And so, when I see these images, I connect to each one in a different way, especially in light of what we heard during the crew yesterday. With the images from the vehicle camera, as a geologist by training, I love looking at the pictures of the lunar surface. And while they are certainly, emotionally, a lot of us have connected with the images of Earth with the images really from during the eclipse, a little bit of what they were feeling. Images from the there's also a lot of science taking pictures of
inside of those images,
and I can tell you that right now as we speak, there is a science evaluation room full of several dozen scientists who are already getting going on those images. A little bit of what they were feeling. Just as one example, there was a healthy scientific inside of those images, and I can tell you that right now during the eclipse period, a science evaluation room we can see of the solar corona and scientists who are already getting going on those images. The conversations and the science lessons learned as one example. There was a healthy scientific debate this morning about some of those images taken during the eclipse period and what we can see of the solar corona and what we can see of zodiacal light. So the conversations and the science lessons learned are just beginning.
His characteristic blackout of when they go around the moon.
Times. Thanks so much for taking the time.
How much longer are missions to the moon going to have as we develop a moon base and having that where do say communication satellites characteristic orbit blackout of land on when they go around the moon? How much longer are missions to the moon going to have that as we develop a moon base? And where do, say, communication satellites
with Orion on the far side of the moon? I mean, we have
list?
comm issues in LEO relatively. Yeah, I'd say, people have asked quite a bit about our elevated operators trained for it, our astronauts do as well. But in terms of the bigger picture, can we do better? Orion on the far side of the moon, this is prioritizing observation and comm relay satellites for lunar operations, so we can bring the world along with us as we build trained for it. Our astronauts do as well. And I think I was in a meeting not that long ago where we described it. I mean, we've talked about prioritizing observation and comm relay satellites for commercial communication lunar operations, so we can bring the world along with us as we build out a moon base. So we have a number of, and I think I was in a meeting not that long ago where we described it as these kind of capabilities that we can take advantage of in LEO system space for, and I have no doubt communication capabilities. Certainly the golden age. We're very close. So we have a number of providers that are all investing heavily in these kind of capabilities that we can take advantage of in LEO,
Can you speak on the responsibility of what being the administrator during such a pivotal moment means? And secondly,
I'm speaking on behalf of musicians around the world and bands. Thanks for doing this. I have a band called Chasing Satellites. And Jared, question for you. Will there be potentially an opportunity to submit music for future Artemis pivotal for the wake-up calls? That was really cool to be a part of and to watch. I'm speaking on behalf of musicians around the world and bands.
Certainly.
I have a band called Chasing Satellites.
I think I've described before that.
Will there be potentially an opportunity to submit music for future Artemis mission for the wake-up calls? That was really cool to be a part of and to watch as a
human spaceflight mission than being in the vehicle itself, especially I think I described as Artemis II, which kicks off. I thought that the so many other exciting ones to follow. A lot more pressure. We returned to the moon, and being on the outside and responsible to learn so that we can undertake even grander missions, as Dr. Glaze especially beyond such as Artemis II, which kicks off. I think it is a great so many other exciting ones to follow from all the expertise that exists within NASA, the workforce, so that we can commercial or international partners that come together for a moment like this, all the testing that goes into it in the future. So I think it is a great responsibility, but running it. Now, in terms of contributions for music and future wake-up music for commercial missions, I hope partners that come together for a moment like this, all the testing that goes into it, the fact that we have to cast before and we're running it. Now, in terms of contributions for music and future wake-up music for subsequent missions, I hope we're running so many missions.
For Administrator Eisenman, Tom Costello with NBC News.
We're going to have to cast.
I'm just wondering, how are you feeling now? I realize we don't have the crew home yet, but you've had a very successful trip around the far side. How are you feeling about this for Administrator Eisenman, Tom Costello with NBC News vehicle? I'm just wondering, how are you feeling now? I realize we don't have the crew home yet, but you've had a very successful
I'd say for this mission,
trip around the far side. How are you feeling about this setting the stage, testing out the vehicle for a lunar landing as soon as 2028?
Water access valves and cabin temperature. I'd say for this mission, for that matter, for all the things that we could have been potentially talking about prior to the mission underway. But I'll breathe easy when we get through re-entry and everybody's undershoots water access valves. In terms of cabin getting ready for the subsequent missions, it's kind of why for all the things that we could have been potentially talking about prior to the mission underway. A lot of people's rightful attention right now is on the crew of Artemis II and everybody's undershoots, especially here at JSC. In terms of getting ready for the subsequent missions, it's kind of recovery forces that are now making their way out to bring this crew back to a lot of people's rightful attention right now is on the other things to get done, thinking about Artemis III here. Very happy that the crawler's making its way out to 39B. The recovery forces that are now, we've got a timeline to get it back in the VAB, to bring this crew back to ideally, and for everybody else on the turnaround, I think we've got the other things to get done to Artemis II. So we can do. Very happy that the crawler's making its way out to 39B right now and get ready for the next one. We've got a timeline to get it back in the VAB, ideally in a week. That would cut down on the turnaround, I think, by 3 months compared to Artemis II. So
life aboard Orion,
we can undertake
flights in deep space, or maybe something unexpected
like Artemis II right now,
shape how
and get ready
NASA
for
and
the
Artemis
next one
crews
at the same
approach
time.
preparing for future missions? Hi, Josh Dinnerspace.com.
Yeah, that's a really
has this mission revealed anything about life aboard Orion, crew workload, flights in deep space, or maybe something unexpected
as part of a lot of the flight test subjective activities we've been doing
for future missions?
I think we have a couple of problems that we still need to work out.
Question.
But Orion has shown itself to be a very capable tremendous amount capsule for a lot of the flight test subjective activities we've been doing. I think we have a couple of problems that we still need to work out. The things that we're going to have to Orion has shown itself to be a very capable, relatively small and incremental in nature, as opposed to wholesale redesigns of spacecraft subsystems. I think overall, I'm extremely pleased with the performance of the spacecraft and talked about how it's the things that we're going to have to improve upon for Artemis III are relatively small and incremental in nature, as opposed to wholesale redesigns of spacecraft subsystems. So overall, I'm extremely pleased with the performance of the spacecraft and how it served as a
would you estimate that have come down so far of the moon? And these luminous flashes on the surface, was that an actual meteor shower, do you think, or is it just your usual business how quickly these pictures are coming down? How many would you estimate that have come down so far of the moon?
The team is working really hard to bring down
these
the
luminous
images
flashes
as fast
on the
as they can. Of
surface,
course, we also have
was that
other
an actual meteor shower, do you think, or is it just your usual business?
But the team is working really hard to try to get those images down, and of course get them out to you guys as well. We, as of the time I left console, of course, roughly an hour ago, there was just over 50 gigabytes of data from yesterday that had come down. Really hard to try to get those images. Every image does not exactly have the moon in it, but it is taken from within the lunar observation period. As of the time I so we're working really hard to get those down, as well as the audio over 50 gigabytes of data from yesterday that had come down. Of course, that's not every image does not exactly have the moon in it, but it is taken from within the lunar observation period. A few of those per hour, and those so we're working really hard to get those down, as well as the audio but there are multiple hours of recording rich scientific data science because it captures the nuance about 2/3 of which we've been able to get down so far, and our team has already been looking at that situational reports you were hearing yesterday. But there are multiple hours. As for the impact flashes, absolutely science observations, I think they saw at least 2/3 and possibly able to get down so far. And our team has already talked to them about that just this morning in the crew conference with them. Transcripts and audio files. As for the impact flashes, absolutely. Hours ago, our teams are looking at it now. I think they saw at least 4 and possibly up to 6 impact flashes. Again, I to try to help us narrow in on that. In the crew conference with them, the lunar environment is a dynamic place. We have a lot to learn about it. This happened less than 24 hours ago. Our teams are looking at it now, and observations like this, our critical orbiter, will be really helpful to try to help us narrow in on that. But the lunar environment is a dynamic place, and we have a lot to learn about it. LRO has returned a lot of information about the lunar environment, but observations like this are a critical part of our understanding, which will pay dividends for future
You brought up the Artemis II mission design.
Eric
can you bring up sort of, or talk about the question 2 or 3 hardest problems so why haven't we been back to the moon in sort of, you talked about the mission design meeting today, sort of the 2 or 3 hardest problems you're tackling right now.
You brought up the Artemis II mission design
next year. Can you bring up sort of, or talk about the 2 or 3 hardest problems that you're tackling? Sort of, you talked about the mission design meeting today. Sort of the 2 or 3 hardest problems you're tackling right now to make sure that launches next year.
There are a lot of things based on the information we have available today from feedback from our vendors that we know are achievable. And I don't want to. I think one of the questions probably will just be what the initial mission that's underway right now. I would just say that is it going to be LEO or HEO, and I think that the information we have some sense of feedback from our vendors that we know pros and cons for each of them for sure. And we're all going to be able to have some sense about which path we'll likely go down based on launch cadence of our 2 HLS providers, both of which have we're all going to have some sense. I would say in the next month, and there's pros and cons for each of them for sure. A big key to our strategy to have some sense about which path will likely go down based on launch cadence of rapid reusability of 2 HLS providers, both of which have. So the more they get experience doing that, the more options that are available for us for less right now. So, but I'd say right now, we certainly have a good plan, but to stay for that mission will help us buy down rapid reusability of heavy landing for Artemis 4 and 28. So the more they get experience doing that, the more options that are available for us for Artemis 3. But I'd say right now we certainly have a good plan for that mission. Will help us buy down a lot of risk in advance of the landing for Artemis 4 and 28.
And verbal descriptions and annotations. What's the plan for the science team in the days and weeks ahead to go through all of that data and see how they address the 10 science objectives that you laid out for the mission? Thank you. Are going to get all of these images.
What a good question. We have a lot of data to get through. Like I said, it has already started. We had teams working overnight, after the crew went to sleep, as soon as we started getting data down. I will reiterate that we will be getting all mission data. We have a lot of data to get through. Science archived. Like I said, it has already started. We had teams working overnight, after the crew went to sleep, as soon as we started getting data down. I will reiterate that we will be getting in the meantime, over those next 6 months, we're also going to be preparing 2 reports and made publicly available to be publicly released within 6 months. These are all of the images of the moon. One is audio science operations report that describes, how our team was structured. But in the meantime, over those next 6 months, we're also going to accomplish our objectives. 2 reports, but relevant to your question, the second one is a post-mission preliminary lunar science report. And so we are going to be going objective by objective how our team was structured to integrate flight operations looking to accomplish our objectives. But relevant to your question, the second one is a post-mission and really trying to lunar science understand and so what data we got relevant to each objective with those 10 lunar science objectives you referenced so that they can access those data and help us answer these fundamental driving science questions. Very large data set. The lunar science team for this mission, it was our charter to develop the objectives and to maximize the science value out of this mission. We'll be doing an initial assessment over 6 months and then access those data and help us answer these fundamental driving science questions. The lunar science team for this mission, it was our charter to develop the objectives and to maximize the science value out of this mission. We'll be doing an initial assessment over 6 months, and then we're really eager to see what the community is able to do with these data.
How does that compare with what was expected?
With the New York Times.
And how does it compare with the usual way of getting data back? Questions about the optical communication. Almost operational already. Not just how many gigabytes were sent, what was the data rate?
Yeah, I think the question was relative to some of the data rates for the optical communication system. I'll just give you a stat from overnight that we heard from Console. We got 20 gigabytes down in a little more than 45 minutes. I think the question was relative to some of the data rates for the optical communication system. I'll just give you a stat from overnight that we heard from Console. Really well. We got 20 gigabytes down in Artemis II, a little more than 45 minutes. Expand its operational capability orders of magnitude more than we get implementation for future missions telemetry system. So optical comm has been working really well, and hopefully we can take what we learned on Artemis II and expand its operational capability and its implementation for future missions.
The vivid descriptions that the crew used for what they were seeing and how they remained in kind of constant contact and talkative throughout the flyby. I'm wondering if it's possible to say how that might have compared to the Apollo crew observations and how that robustness impacted the science and the data that was collected for what they were seeing and how they remained in kind of constant contact and talkative throughout the flyby. I'm wondering if it's possible to say how that might have compared to the Apollo crew observations
and maybe watching Apollo in real time online and reliving what the Apollo crews, not just on the surface but in orbit, experienced. Absolutely. I'm sure heard the Apollo descriptions of the lunar surface from orbit, and they were also really impactful. They trained heavily in geology and orbital observations, reliving what the Apollo crew did, not just on the surface but in orbit, experienced. Listening to the level of scientific discourse that the crew was having yesterday from orbit, and they were also really inspiring. I mean, a testament to how much they prepared before this mission, just like the Artemis II crew did. I heard a couple times Christina and Victor especially saying, when we took the time to actually talk to each other about a specific target that we were both seeing, we elevated each other. We elevated what we were able to how much they prepared before this mission. More brains on a scientific target a couple times Christina and Victor especially heard from them directly multiple times when we took the time to actually talk to each other about a specific target that we were both seeing. We elevated each other. We elevated what we were able to pull out of that target. Say, more brains on a scientific target are better than one hypothesis. We heard from them directly multiple times that so the science team was saying, was cross-checking what they were seeing, was reading up geologic ages of major lunar impact features, and it was informing the observations they were making during the guidance on that hypothesis. I mean, this is right now in the middle of our flyby. So the science team was saying, was cross-checking what they were seeing, was reading up geologic ages exploration and exploration impact features, and it was informing the observations they were making during the flyby. And I was able to immediately follow up on those observations, integrating science into flight operations. Quick questions that can enhance science enables exploration, and exploration enables science. And the fact that they're giving observations in real time and during their flyby. I was able to and just imagining the future when we have crew on the surface for short duration missions and ultimately the moon base. It meant the amount of science we were able to gain down multiple working hypotheses is woven into this operational fabric is just imagining the future we saw when we have crew on the surface for short duration missions and ultimately the moon base.
Now
the
we'll
amount of science we are able to gain when science is woven into this operational fabric is incredibly impactful. And we saw that for 7 straight hours yesterday.
From the service module,
now
if you have that on hand.
Now we'll move to Micah Maidenberg with the Wall Street Journal.
The administrator mentioned splashdown is expected for around 8:07 Eastern. And then any color on
what is the approximate time on Friday
work ahead module separates from the control between service module, now if you have that on hand. The administrator.
Sure, I'll start with some of the times. The crew module and service module separation is going to occur about 20 minutes before entry interface. So that separation will be at 7:33 p.m. Eastern Time. We expect entry interface about 7:53 p.m. The crew module and service module separation is going to occur about 20 minutes before entry interface. So as for the preparations that the ground and the astronauts are doing today to prepare for entry interface about 7:53 a lot of it is Eastern Time. All of the with a splashdown science equipment and cameras and Eastern Time tablets and reference material. As for the preparations that the ground flyby, well, we have astronauts are doing today to pack up our entry suitcases and get ready to come home. A lot of it is that takes time. All of the science equipment and cameras to make sure that the crew gets everything packed away. Reference material that got time to get their suits on and get in their seats. Well, we have to put that all away. We have to pack up that final trajectory correction and get ready to come splashdown day, and that takes time. And so we are laying out a plan to make sure that the crew gets everything packed away in time to get their suits on and get in their seats.
Do you have any
to perform that final trajectory correction maneuver on splashdown day and come home?
You hope it is. And
we'll move back in the room to Joey and then on to Will.
Or what are the problems
Joey, we're with Reuters. I just have another quick the engineering team is going to go through a full fault tree to identify all of the potential causes of the blockage. Initially, you may have recalled that we thought it might be icing up at the nozzle at the outer mold line of the spacecraft. So the engineering team is going to go through a full fault tree to put the spacecraft identify all of the potential causes of the blockage to bake off. Initially, you may have recalled we've activated heaters. We thought it might be icing up at the internal to the spacecraft, the outer mold line of the spacecraft. We still see a pretty high confidence that it's not an icing condition. We put the spacecraft some of the chemistry in a sun that goes into ensuring that the wastewater doesn't develop any biofilms along the lines internal to the spacecraft with a chemical reaction where we still see a blockage. And so the latest theory is related as part of that reaction. Some of the chemistry that goes into again, we don't have root cause. The wastewater once we get the spacecraft back into the processing facility going on with a chemical reaction, we'll be able to get access to all the components and do a real detailed fault tree to that reaction, and it's getting clogged in a filter. But again, we don't have root cause.
Hi, Will Robinson Smith with Spaceflight. Thank you all for taking the time. Going back to Dr. Young's point about the intersection of science and exploration, to both Dr. Young and to Dr. Glaze, given the number of believed to be impact flashes that the crew observed during just a relatively brief amount of time, I wonder the intersection of science and exploration and the ones made previously by Dr. Young and to Dr. Glaze will factor into given the number of the conditions believed to be impact flashes that the crew observed during just a relatively brief amount of time. That I wonder how these observations and the ones made previously by LRO will factor into creating
I do think that the data that we're collecting with these observations, and as you noted, the LRO data that we're continuously collecting, we have been for quite a while. All of that is being fed into our plans and making sure that we understand what all of the variety of risks are. I do think that the data that we're collecting with these observations, and as you noted, the LRO data that we're continuously collecting, as we start to establish infrastructure on the surface and understanding those rates, fed into our plans and making sure that we understand what all the variety of risks what we can anticipate. And of course, many that we're different parts of the moon. Of course, down at the South Pole, maybe we'll as we start to establish infrastructure on the surface at higher latitudes. So we need to these kind of data really help inform us as far as what we can anticipate. And of course, the different parts of the moon, down at the South Pole, maybe a little slightly different rates than we would see higher up at higher latitudes. So we need to compile all those data and understand what those impacts might be.
I talked to Joe Kearns yesterday, and he had told me, I'm just looking at his quote, as a scientist, I can tell you what's most inspirational is when you're pushing through something you're working on and you realize that you found yesterday. I know the question was asked about what was inspirational. I talked to Joe Kearns yesterday, but is there anything else he had told me, no one else has seen before, as a scientist, I can tell you what's most inspirational is when you're pulling through something you're working on and you realize high level you're seeing something that nobody else has ever seen before. I know you talked about the impact flashes, but is there anything else could maybe give us some answers on before that you guys have already saw And then also explain to us on Earth that maybe this is high level.
I might just give a specific example of something I heard from the crew yesterday. My background's in geology and specifically impact cratering. So every time they describe those beautiful basins, I get really excited. Questions. They did describe. I might just give a specific example of something I heard from the crew a variety of different color and albedo geology and specifically impact cratering. So every time they describe those beautiful basins, I get really excited. This could indicate impact crater a couple of different times, and they noticed a variety of different color and albedo hues associated not just with excavate material but with the rays that extend out from the crater, which means they're kind of like a geologist impact, right? Where you can't get all the way down there by yourself, but when an impact has brought up that material for you, it can actually perform that excavation, but they can excavate material to the right spots on the surface, and they can actually look at depths. They're kind of like a geologist cheat code, and I bring that up here to say that you can't get all the way down there by yourself. Around Ohm yesterday was they actually noticed color and albedo that excavation, and coming out in those rays, and they the right spots on the surface, and they can actually look at depths along the ray systems. And I bring that up here to say that lead us to believe that around that crater excavated was they actually noticed color and albedo hues coming out in those rays, and they noticed that they were distinct and different and evolved along the ray system, future land potentially lead us to believe to understand that crater excavated from distinct scientific value the surface of the moon. Ultimately get so it's those kinds chronology of the solar system as to how the inner solar system has evolved over time, which connects to the moon being the witness plate for our planet and for the inner solar system to maximize the scientific value. You heard Lori and I the other day get very excited chronology of the solar system and how the inner solar system has evolved over time, that gets in the way of us looking at the early part of our planet's past and for the inner solar system. The fact that part of the record, Lori and I the other day get very excited about is still talking about where it's available tectonics and oceans and vegetation, the far side gets in the way of us looking at the early part of our planet's past has the South Pole Basin, which is my personal favorite record of our Earth-Moon system. It's the oldest basin in the solar system. If we can get the right age constraints on that basin, it can help us highlands and the South chronology, specifically the South Pole, for the entire solar system. Has the South Pole basin, observing things like they did with Ohm, where they can say, with my eyes, the oldest basin in the solar system, if we can get the right age constraints on that basin, it can help us anchor the chronology, could tell us something for the entire solar system. This is how we start to observing things like they did with Ohm, where they can say, really fundamental science questions that impact not just our understanding of the moon, but how our own planet has evolved over time. High-priority landing sites could tell us something similar. This is how we start to really bite away at these really fundamental science questions that impact not just our understanding of the moon, but how our own planet has evolved over time.
As we approach EI and pass EI, what Mark Reid does capability you have, what kind of cross range and downrange capability you have, when you committed to that landing zone. Sounds like whether it's thermally benign entry you're going to fly, do you still expect to exceed approach EI and pass EI? What Reid does capability you have, what kind of cross range and downrange capability you have when you committed to that landing zone.
Find the answers.
And also,
I do not have the answer offhand about the Apollo 10 speed record, so
do you still
we'll
expect to exceed Apollo 10's speed record?
And tomorrow I'm actually going to provide a lot of detail about the sequence of events for entry. That's all right. You can still keep asking the questions, and we'll go flight director and we'll find answers. I do not have the answer offhand about the Apollo 10 speed record. Your particular question about entry interface tomorrow. We can select a new landing site as late as entry. A lot of detail about the sequence of events for entry to not do that, as I'm the entry flight director. Give ourselves a little bit of margin, but we can adjust the latitude and longitude of the site. Your particular question about entry interface to those coordinates. We can select a new landing site as late as entry interface. So we're going to make a decision to not do that far in advance of entry interface. We like to give ourselves a little bit of margin, but because we can adjust the latitude and longitude of the site to ensure that the spacecraft will fly to those coordinates and her crew, so long as we get that command up before we have the recovery forces right nearby to help get them out and get them back to the recovery far in advance of entry interface to know where the splashdown site will be. So we have about a 475 integrity and nautical mile range splashdown that we have the recovery forces right nearby to help get them out and get them back to the recovery ship. 475 miles of ocean within which we can select the most acceptable weather. We have about a 475 weather near San Diego looks favorable, so I'm optimistic that we'll be able to land. I can't do that conversion. But 475 miles of ocean within which we can select the most acceptable weather.
First of all, congratulations
and as you said, weather near San Diego looks favorable, so I'm optimistic that we'll be able to land close to the shore.
There's been a lot of focus on the toilet, but I'm looking to get a kind of overall Sky News perspective on how happy you've been with Orion. Congratulations on the flyby and those breathtaking images. You're going to have to fix before you fly it again. And how confident are you? There's been a lot of focus on the toilet, but I'm looking to get a kind of overall perspective on how happy you've been with Orion and
talked
the
about
European Service Module.
how the Orion is performing, and it's performing spectacularly. I have to tell you, our Orion team is so pleased with really everything the way that it's performing. Talked about the engines, how the Orion is manual control, and it's performing. You've heard us talk about several times that our Orion team is just so pleased, gone over and over about how really everything that's performing, how nicely that it's performing is handling. The service module, again, providing everything that we need. Heard us talk about several challenges, but the crew overall, I think they're pretty minor in the whole grand scheme of things. How well that's performing, nicely the Orion performing extremely well is handling. We're really looking forward to turning this around, providing everything that we need. We've had a couple of challenges, a year after that. But overall, I think this hardware is pretty minor in the whole grand scheme of things. The hardware itself performing extremely well. We're really looking forward to turning this around. Figured out. The toilet is actually functioning perfectly, and then again a year after that, the ability to vent this hardware is really spectacular. And as Rick said earlier, as soon as we get this down on the ground, we'll be able to get inside, and we're going to get the toilet figured out. The toilet is actually functioning perfectly. It's the drain, the ability to vent the wastewater.
Actually, for all of you,
and as Rick said earlier, as soon as we get this down on the ground, we'll be able to get inside, and we will get to the root of that.
Did any stand out for you as favorites?
Oh, of like the analogies they use to describe lunar
Science
features?
News. This is especially for Kelsey, but actually for all of you.
I liked the
astronauts yesterday used a lot of really fun
and that
analogies and descriptors for the features on the moon they were seeing. Did any stand out for you as
to figure out
favorites?
exactly what they meant. They found it this morning.